Hello and welcome to a video about stuffing Gnathan, the gnome from Not Just Another Gnome from Imagine Landscapes. I have my weighted stuffing, some black-eyed peas. I don't think that's actually what they're called. Now I'm concerned. I've got fluffy stuffing, and then I have a DPN because we're going to be stuffing the hat all the way up. And to get it right up here to the top, we will probably need something just to cram it in there, and a chopstick or a needle is a great resource. So let's start off by getting the stuffing up into that tip of the hat. So we've got our body, sections 1 and sections 2 are done. Open it up. We're going to lightly stuff the hat. We want to stuff it full enough that it stands, but not so full that it starts to be heavy and top heavy. The more we stuff the hat, the harder it is for us to get the bottom. We want the center of gravity on this gnome to be low enough that we don't have to use so much fluff or weighted stuffing. So I've kind of turned my gnome partially inside out. Obviously the farther I go, the easier it is for me to reach the tip. So we're going to start with the tip. So grab your polyfill or your roving or whatever it is you're using. You're definitely going to want to start with a small amount when we're doing this, the tip here, and don't pack it down, just kind of leave it quite open. Using your fingers, get it as high up as you can. And then what you will probably need to do is using something else, just try to fill out that last little bit of the hat. Once you've got it in there with your pointy object, then you can use your fingers to kind of cram things in and kind of bulk it up. Again, at no point in the hat do we want things to be very firmly stuffed. We usually say firm stuffing for the body part of a gnome. So I always recommend that you stuff a gnome using small amounts rather than big amounts. If you stuff with small amounts, they nestle next to each other without big gaps, and that means that you're less likely to have lumps. So it's better to go more often with smaller bits than just thwacking a huge honk load of fluffy stuffing in there. So just start with small amounts, work your way in. As the circumference of the gnome gets wider, obviously the pieces can get larger. One of the things we're looking to avoid when we're stuffing a gnome is that any of the time the stitches would get stretched open and maybe kind of distort the stitches. We want things to be fairly closed up so that we don't have the stuffing coming through. So once you've lightly stuffed the hat, then we need to more firmly stuff the body just to start shifting the weight of the gnome to the bottom. When I am firmly stuffing, what I like to do is I like to take a section of yarn or of roving, and then once I'm up inside with it, I kind of push it using my thumb and my fingers and kind of flatten it out. And by doing that, what I'm doing is I'm kind of I'm creating a layer of the stuffing and making sure it goes all the way to the edges. I'm also feeling to making sure that there's no air gaps. So you may notice me sort of moving things around inside with my fingers, and that's what I'm doing, is I am trying to make sure that I am getting the stuffing everywhere. And then depending on the gnome or the shape of things, I use things and just kind of, I've spread it apart. So we're stuffing this about 2/3 full with the fluffy stuffing. Don't worry about getting it too perfect, because once we've done that, now I'm going to go and I'm going to knit the decreases till things are much narrower, and then we will put the weighted stuffing in. So there's going to be another chance to come in, make sure things are nice and firmly stuffed, and then we'll come in with the weighted stuffing. I'm up to about here with fluffy stuffing, and I think I want a little bit more. My beans here are pretty heavy, so I'm just going to do a bit more stuffing. depending on what you're stuffing with, obviously it's literally a balancing act. You want enough of the weighted stuffing that when you go to stand up Gnathan, that he wants to stand, but not so much that he's really heavy, or that what happens is he starts to really distort. It's not always the case, but because the weighted stuffing obviously has more pressure to it, it can cause the edges of the gnome to kind of bag out. And so you want to have enough, but not too much. Some people like to put the weighted stuffing in like a little bag made of like gauze, or the toe of a nylon or something like that. Another option is to take some of the fluffy stuffing and kind of line the inside, which is definitely something you want to do if you're using something DK weight or thicker, because at that point the stitches and the gaps between them start to get closer to especially the plastic pellets. So those are some things. So the way I do this, and Gnathan is a very tall gnome, so I can't stand him up without sort of running into the camera. So I place the needles over top of my fingers and thumb, make sure that I've got space to go, and then I scoop up and I just start filling it in. And once it's full, I pick it up, and things always readjust in here. And then what I want to do is I want to fill it up to about this garter ridge we made when we did the turning row, or turning round. So from this round onwards, we want it to be flat. So we don't want to stuff so that we're stuffing into where the decreases are. Then we'll get a rounded bottom, and that's a really, that just makes a whole tippy mess. So once you're up to that turning ridge, that's when you would stop. All right, so you can see as I am placing this here that we're kind of getting the right amount. I'm not going above that ridge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of the fluffy stuffing, not much at all, and we just place it in there. I kind of make it into like a disc, nice flat little shape. And what we want to do is we want to place it in the bottom of the gnome and tuck it in under the stuff we've already knitted in those decreases, so that as we finish knitting the decreases, the weighted stuffing isn't jumping out. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to finish the decreases, and then I'm going to sew in the ends, and that will be fine. If you once you have the little cap in here, you can flip it upside down and see what you think. Does it have enough weight at the bottom? Does it feel roughly balanced? The needles will of course give it a bit of extra stability, but you should be able to tell sort of from the feel of the weight if it feels like he's going to be fairly stable or not. Hope this helps. That's Stuffing Gnathan, and not just another gnome tutorial from Imagine Landscapes. Happy knitting and happy gnoming.